Good afternoon. My name is Sheila Lamb, and I'm with the Virginia SBDC Network. For those of you that are not familiar with our organization, the Virginia Small Business Development Center is a partnership program between the U.S. Small Business Administration, George Mason University, and local host institutions throughout Virginia. With 26 locations across the Commonwealth, we provide training and technical assistance to small businesses in their local communities. Our one-on-one advising services are available at no charge. Today's webinar, Contracts, Compliance, and Cyber Risk, is presented by the Virginia SBDC Network. Save the date for our next cybersecurity webinar taking place July 23rd, Protecting Customer Information in a Digital Business. And I'll drop that registration link into the chat momentarily. We are recording today's presentation and it will be posted on our website, virginiasbdc.org. Due to the expected large number of participants, everyone's microphone is muted and the chat feature is turned off. But if you have questions during the presentation, you can type those into the Q&A box and we will adjust them at the end of the session. We have also enabled the live transcript function, which you can show or hide via your own meeting controls. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter for today's session, Kiana Gainey. Kiana is a 20-plus year IT and cybersecurity industry veteran and has served as Chief Executive Officer for SecureTech 360, located in Springfield, Virginia, since its inception in 2010. She is also the Cyber Industry Specialist for the Virginia SBDC. Welcome, Kiana.
Thank you, Sheila, and welcome to everyone. For anyone that's joining from the DMV area, hope that you're staying cool. Today should be a fun topic, everything about contracts, cybersecurity, and compliance. Next slide. So, if you haven't noticed over the last few years, cybersecurity is now making its way into contract requirements. So we'll talk about some key compliance frameworks, looking at how even you may even be responsible for having some cybersecurity clauses in contracts, ways you can reduce your cyber risk. We'll end with a couple tips to put together an action plan and some resources, and we'll take some questions at the end. Next slide. So a little bit about myself. I've been in the industry for over 20 years, but as Sheila mentioned earlier, I am very excited about supporting the small business community as a cybersecurity advisor for the SPDC Virginia. So very excited to be a part of this amazing group of folks. And we do have a wonderful website that has a lot of wealth of information that we'll post with the webinar at the end as well. Next slide. So let's jump right in. So if you've been in business for the last few years or you're just getting started, and maybe cybersecurity is not in your business now, cybersecurity is no longer an option for any type of business, whether it's small, medium, or large. When you're doing business, especially if you're in the government contract space, especially in this area, I know it's pretty popular. Before I know it for myself, I was a subcontractor for years, and a lot of the compliance and contract portion of my responsibilities would really flow to the prime contractor. But now, the last few years, they're starting to flow some of those responsibilities to subcontractors. And so some of those contract obligations, we have to be, abreast of those to help reduce a legal, financial, and sometimes our operational risk. And for any other other businesses, whether you're selling products online, working with healthcare organizations, supporting local governments, or there's those industries also you're starting to see a lot of buzz around cybersecurity because it's becoming a prerequisite for how we're doing business. So next slide. We'll jump right in about that today. So think about it. When was the last time you had a contract and you read through it, in its entirety? Or even I always like to say, if you go to a website and you see the privacy policies or you see some things posted about, things about the site itself, when is the last time you've taken the time to read through those policies, right? So a lot of folks, we don't do that. But one of the things, if you're on the other end of that and you're the one that has to post these privacy policies or how you're going to be, securing the data or any data that you're collecting, it's very important that you understand all of the requirements, whether it's for commercial or even for government contracts. Organizations expect for vendors to protect their sensitive information. I always say put yourself in the driver's seat as the customer. If you're the customer, you want your information protected. I know we've all been victims of some sort of we have received something in the mail after the fact if our information has either been leaked or it's been hacked or it's some kind of way something happened to it. And some of it's most of our sensitive data. So you have things like your healthcare data or even some of your credit cards, and you've received maybe a year subscription to some credit reporting, but you're wondering, how was my data protected from the beginning? So think about that even on the opposite side as the customer or even as the one that's putting together the cybersecurity requirements in your contracts. Poor cybersecurity can result in a loss of business opportunities and also reputation. So I hope that today we can give you some language and some common contract language to help reduce your cyber risk and even some practical next step regardless of your company size. Next slide. A few common compliance requirements. NIST, if you're in the government contracting space, you probably heard of this, which is a framework that they use to secure certain data or wage data frameworks or different requirements within the governing body of the government contracting or government agency that you're supporting. NIST, one of them is one popular one is NIST 800-171. And then anyone who is a small business now doing even subcontracting work, a new one that has been implemented over the last couple of years is CMCC. And then some of the other industry regulations, if you're dealing with healthcare data, you're probably familiar with HIPAA, PCI, DSS, and GLBA. Those are also two very popular industry regulations. So if you have to adhere to those regulations, it's very important that you understand how it relates to cybersecurity. So when you're building your, or if you're one putting together a contract for someone else, or if you have vendors that you're putting together a contract for, or vice versa, if you have vendors that you receive a contract from, to make sure that they're adhering to those compliance regulations as well, as before you start doing business with them. And why is that important? May think to yourself, I'm just a small business. Hackers know small business often have fewer security controls. Instead of attacking larger corporations directly, they attack vendors, suppliers. If your specialty, like an accountant, marketing firm, law firms, even cleaning companies, anyone connected to a larger organization, your business can become the doorway into someone else's network. So that's why organizations now verify cybersecurity before doing business with other customers or even other small business or other business in general. So just keep that in mind. Next slide. So some common cybersecurity contract clauses to add to your contracts if you're putting them together. Um, don't just rely on the vendor's platforms and the services that they provide daily. Criminals often target trusted third-party agencies to gain access. Gave you a few examples earlier. And one breach can impact your business and other business that you're connected to. So if you can see, it's like a chain reaction. So making sure that you have some type of vendor risk management is very critical to making sure that you're adhering to cybersecurity. For example, imagine you hired and manage payroll for your company and they receive your employees' social security numbers, payroll information, bank account information. If a laptop with one of their employees is stolen and there's no encryption, now all of your data is now part of a data breach, right? So you want to make sure that anyone that you're doing business with in that scenario, that some type of agreement between you and that contract company or that vendor that will require them to notify you immediately, so that because you're the one that's financially responsible, right? So even though you hired them to manage your payroll, you're still ultimately responsible. So make sure you protect yourself and also your customers that are entrusting you with their sensitive information. Next slide. So just the basic things, like if you've done any type of contracts between your, if you put together a contract or you have been a part of the whole contract process, make sure that you review the contract thoroughly. Look at for all the cybersecurity requirements, confirm that your organization can either meet or the organization that you're bringing in, like the payroll company as an example, can meet those required controls to protect your information and your customers' information. Understanding what the reporting timelines can be. So for some agencies I've seen, like they have 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. Think about that. How soon would you want someone to contact you? You know, when people hear compliance, they often panic, but compliance simply means following an agreed set of expectations. Think of them like building codes. They're your checklists. They're designed to protect information. Not every business needs, right? Not every business needs a lot of different types of codes, right? Or different types of controls, but some do need some form of some type of framework. The basics is just to have a key understanding on which ones apply to you and to your customers. And then think about things. There are other things that you can use to help protect yourself as well. Outside of making sure you're reviewing your cybersecurity requirements carefully, making sure that the business or your business or the business that you're contracting out understands the required controls for said compliance or contract requirements that you have to adhere to, putting together some type of reporting timeline, and then there are potential liabilities, right? So identify what those can be. Can those things be used with having them produce some type of cyber insurance, or is it something that you need to have for your organization to protect you and your customers as well? So imagine if you're processing credit cards, right? Your customers should expect compliance with certain payment security requirements. If you work with providers, they may have privacy and security obligations. So think about all of those things before you sign the contract. Next slide. So, a few things that you can do today as actionable steps for compliance. If your business is already started, or if you're just getting started and you're putting together a business plan, think about all of the potential risk for your organization and perform like a cybersecurity risk assessment. It can be as simple as, for myself, when I first started my small business, I wanted everything from my physical security to match what my online presence would look like. So, for example, if I had someone sitting at the front, if packages were being delivered, I made sure that there was a sign in and sign out checklist and or at the front desk, and then we would look at that every day to see if the same people are coming, and then to make sure that we also didn't get too familiar with a certain person, because things happen each day. So you need to make sure that those people are still a part of your operation. So, for example, if I had one delivery guy for UPS and then all of a sudden I got a new delivery guy for UPS, those type of things we will have conversations. What will we do in the event that something happens? Same thing with our online presence. When I put together my privacy policies or different things that I want my customer base to understand how I'm going to protect their data, I make sure I laid that out and put that in writing as well. Other things that you can do in your contracts is make sure that, there's some kind of way or some type of security training. It can be for yourself, it could be for your employees, or even if you have third-party vendors that you're using, find out how do they, handle breaches? How do they have any type of employee security training? Are they maintaining cyber risk insurance? Are they using things like multi-factor authentication? Are they encrypting sensitive data? How soon will they notify you? Will it be 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours if there's a breach? All of these things are, I think, conversations that should be had prior to you signing the contract. Next slide. So, give you another scenario. Imagine signing a contract that requires a breach notification within 24 hours. Um, your employee, clicks a phishing email on a Friday afternoon. You don't investigate it until Monday. If there is a requirement or a clause in the contract that requires that any type of breach has to be a 24-hour notification, If you don't investigate that till, let's say, Monday, you've already missed the reporting deadline. Even if the breach wasn't severe or it wasn't done um, it, within that time frame, you're now in violation of that contract. So think about what you can do to reduce your cyber risk in advance. There are small things you can do on the technology side if you have systems or applications or laptops in your environment or any type of computers that you're using. Make sure that you're patching them regularly, making sure that all the applications are up to date. Backing up any critical business data is also very important as well. And then also, outside of doing backups, make sure you test those backups. Cannot tell you how many times agencies that I've been to, small, large, or medium, who spent money to back up their information regularly, but they don't test them. And so when something happens and we're trying to recover from that backup, what do you think happens? It's a corrupt data, or you can't use it. So make sure, in addition to backing up your data, that you're also testing as well. If you have, endpoint protection, making sure that it's enabled. If you can use multi-factor authentication, there are a few things on the market that you can use today. I know one popular one is Duo. I have it on most of my devices where I just send a code, maybe either to an email or to a phone number, as another way to be able to secure the connection as people are logging in and out of my systems. And then if you don't have an incident response plan, and that's what we talked about, having something that's written down that says what to do in the event that something happens, if a breach occurs, who should be contacted, should it be 24 hours, 72 hours? Should it be, days, weeks, whatever it is? Making sure that you have that. If you do put together an incident response plan, just like with the backups, make sure you're testing as well. And then also review any vendor security, contracts or any clauses that you have. Make sure that you're doing that on a regular basis. I like to do it at least on an annual basis or at least when a significant change occurs. Next slide. Also, very important. So always say, as with leadership, you set the expectation. So building that security first culture, meaning, even if cybersecurity is not in the part of your business, make it just like you put together your business plan and you're thinking about marketing and you're thinking about accounting. Make sure you have a section for cybersecurity. And that can be as simple as, how often will we train our employees? What do we do in the event that something happens? What type of technology we're going to use within our infrastructure. Are we going to use laptops? Are we going to use regular desktops? What type of applications we're going to use? How often are we going to do things like patch management? Think about all of those things. Integrate it into your daily operations and then promote continuing awareness and accountability. For me, even though we're a small company, even when I had 3 to 5 employees, we still would do regular check-ins, and regular check-ins would either be a daily email that will go out and then turn into a weekly email, and then even within our own staff meetings, we would talk about different things that are coming up, even from things that are we see on the news, if we see different breaches, different type of attacks, making sure that we were abreast of what was happening as well. Next slide. So you'll think about it. When you're reducing cyber risk, think of it like a house. I always like to think of cybersecurity as a house. If you have a home and you have a lot of valuable things inside of it, you would not just install one lock, right? I know most people have 2 locks even at their front door. If you have several doors in your house, I'm sure you have locks on each of the doors. If you think about it, you would probably, if you have cameras in your home, I know Ring is very popular. So I have my Ring cameras and I have my ADP. Then I also have locks on my door. I even have a dog. I have all these different things. That's the same thing with cybersecurity. The more things that you have, it gives you a layered, it all works together. Security is like a layered approach. Layers work together. No single tool protects everything, but all of it as a combination does help you have a level of protection as well. And then also think about, what cybersecurity support you'll need, even in your contracts or even with your vendors that you're using, to make sure that you are setting yourself up for success. And then think about compliance. Compliance builds trust, and it also helps you be, helps you stand out among other small businesses who are probably not thinking about all the compliance regulations and how it relates to cybersecurity. It builds trust with your customer base. It builds trust with even some of your employees, the people around you, and also helps you maintain to be a little competitive. Managing cyber risk protects your business and your customers. If a criminal steals someone's password, it's not that password alone that will be the one control that you know got circumvented. But if you had something like multi-factor authentication enabled, that control will be a preventative tool that you can use that goes along with that layered approach as well. Next slide. So I know I kind of went through a lot in a little bit of time, but just wanted to really just drive home that cybersecurity is now a business requirement. It's not just an IT issue. Understand your contract before you sign it reduces risk, it strengthens your competitive position, and it all starts with just preparing. Preparation, I always say, is the remedy to most incidents. Now, sometimes we can't prevent everything from happening, but we can be prepared to help secure just any type of attacks that may come our way. Um, Cybersecurity isn't just about being perfect. It's less expensive than recovery. It's about reducing your risk. Small businesses may often believe that you're too small to be targeted, but in reality, cyber criminals frequently target smaller organizations because they expect you to have fewer security controls. Every business can improve, every business can become more resilient, and every business can take, steps each day to get better as you're, growing. Think about even if you have contracts now, go back and look at your contracts, for the cybersecurity clause. If you have contracts that you produce, look back over those and see if you address cybersecurity and what things you can, incorporate into your business as well. Next slide. So again, can stump that more in that preparation is key. Implementing proactive measures such as doing these regular audits, testing your backups, making sure you have an incident response plan, testing an incident response plan, doing employee training. I believe in doing employee training when you first onboard someone, and then having it throughout your employees journey with you as well. Recognizing certain cybersecurity threats as it impacts your small business. It's going to be different for healthcare, where it'll be different for a financial institution, where it may be different for someone who is in government contracting, but the risks are all the same, right? So making sure that you build that cybersecurity security first culture is very important. Staying proactive will also help with safeguarding your business against cyber risk as well. Next slide. If nothing else, you don't leave here today, make sure that if you haven't thought about how to incorporate cybersecurity, best practices into your organization, that's key. If you are, for every vendor or contractor that is in your like business ecosystem, take some time. I know we do spring cleaning, but even it's the summer, we're kicking off the summer, or anytime that you have some downtime, start looking back through what you currently have in place and look up places where you can improve. You don't have to have a massive budget. You can do things by just doing simple, cybersecurity awareness training, communicating best practices to your employees, or even to some of your customers. That also help reduce their risk and yours as well. Remember, trust is important in business relationships, but security verification is essential. So making sure that you promote that within your organization will definitely help, manage your third party risk and help protect your business, your customers, your reputation, and also your future growth. Next slide. Any questions?
We have had a couple of questions come in. Let me pull
Okay.
those up. Okay, the first question we had was, is there a need for 1099 partners to comply with cybersecurity requirements? I'm going to read the whole question. If you need me to break it back down, I can.
Okay.
So, is there a need for 1099 partners to comply with cybersecurity requirements? Is it a good idea to partner with a vetted company to perform a security audit for a consulting firm?
Oh, yes. So whether, our 1099 partners are all a part of our ecosystem, right? And so if they are going to be doing work on your behalf, on your organization, think of it like, always think of it as any type of contractor. If I hire a contractor to come in, although they have their own business and this is their skill set, it's still my home, right? So we can go back and forth and you say, I'm renovating my home. So forgive me if everything is in renovation mode in my head. If I want a certain type of white paint and maybe there's another paint that they feel is the best paint, because it's my house ultimately, they can give me a recommendation, right? But because I hired you for a service, I still need you to make sure that you're doing the paint that I need, because maybe I need that paint for a particular reason, right? So think of your 1099 partners, anyone that your vendors, anyone that's in your ecosystem. You need to put something in place in your contracts to state how you want them to handle any cybersecurity requirements that are handed down to you from your customers, from your contracts. Make sure that it's in writing. You can put it in their agreement with them and make sure that they sign it as well. And it's a discussion. So there may be things that they may say, you know, I, even though I'm doing um, this service for you, my capacity is this. Maybe that's to open up the conversation on what is their capacity versus what you may need to mitigate some of the risks that maybe they can't perform, but maybe you want to still use them as a vendor. So, it's better to be safe than sorry. So make sure that you just put it in writing. Make sure you both have an agreement prior to you onboarding them to be a part of your business ecosystem. Second question, is it a good idea to partner with a vetted company? Absolutely. Anytime you're doing a security audit or you want someone to take a deeper dive, think about it. I always think about my car. I could probably, YouTube or with AI and Google most things, but certain things I'm going to go with a licensed mechanic, a trusted mechanic to work on certain things for my car, right? So think about that. You want someone that has experience relative to your industry as well. So it's not a one size fit all as well. So think about it. If you get a person that has a vetted company, but let's say they're not used to working with a business that has your security requirements or regulations, they may not be able to give you a more, full 360 security audit. So think about that as well. So check their references, ask the hard questions. Have you ever done a business of this, nature? This is what I need as far as compliance wise. I'm a medical organization and I have HIPAA regulations. Make sure they understand all of those things before you dive into do business with them as well.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, next question. We've had a few more drop in. What is a cost-effective means of backing up your data?
Oh, so that's a good one. So cost effective, depending on your budget. A lot of the applications have, like, I know Microsoft has OneDrive, Google has their Drive, and some of them they start off as free, and then there may be a couple of dollars a month to be able to use their storage to be able to back up the data. You can start there. Those are usually the most cost effective, is using some of the applications storage within the device or that you're using. I would start there. There's usually a couple dollars. Sometimes they're free, but that's free, of course, is probably not going to give you as much security or may not even give you as much storage. So think about what your goals are now for backing up your data and then what they will be, because every business wants to grow. So make sure you have a budget for their room to grow as well.
Next question. How do you price out the cost of compliance in your contract proposal, and is it required to identify it to the customer or client?
How do you price out the cost of compliance in your contract proposal? So, with anything, I mean, I've done government contract as well, right? And so, if this is, and I'm just assuming this is a government contract, um, when I think of compliance, I think about the cost of not doing it, right? So, and that cost could be, different for each person or each business owner, depending on the organizations or the customers they support or the things the items within their infrastructure. So that cost can range, right? So let's say if you want to um, give everyone on the contract laptops, and you have to put encryption on each laptop, and you have to put multi-factor authentication on each contract. You need to think about what those costs associated with do that. I want to do cyber risk insurance because now I have people that's touching data, and they're in the field, and now I got to think about workman's comp. I got to think about all these different things. When you do your budget, just like you're doing your budget for anything in your business, think about the cost of what the cost of if something happened. Would it be more costly to do it upfront, or would it be more costly to do it on the back end? What's one thing? And then think about your budget overall. And is it required to identify it to the customer or client? Absolutely. Especially if it's a requirement that's being driven by them. So like for myself, I'm a subcontract. I'm also a prime contractor. Some of the costs that were associated with some of the new requirements for me as a subcontractor, I had to add that as a part of my pricing structure because it went up like with anything. I mean, the price of gas, the price of food, the price of everything goes up, right? So think about that. There's always going to be reoccurring costs that will always go up. So make sure you always budget for those things as well. I hope I answered your question. I kind of went around in a way, but yeah, the
So,
short
yeah, I
answer
will
is
ask if
yes.
that question wasn't answered. You can go ahead and drop it in the Q&A and we'll continue on. We have a few more we'll start getting to now. I'm going to go ahead and advance to our next slide for this next question, Kiana.
Okay.
Let's see. So the next question was, does the government have an approved list of cybersecurity vendor list?
Great questions. So I know the government has a list of resources to help you as a small business navigate cybersecurity. Now, as far as vendors are a tricky thing because you can't really endorse one vendor over another. But what I would say, if you're in a specific industry and you have other small businesses around you, always go back to my network and go back to, my trusted, advisors to see if they have vendors that they can necessarily recommend. And then also do your research. One thing about modern technology is that I know I read reviews, go back and read the reviews on some of these companies, even ask them for a list of references that you can contact to see if they're a good fit for you. And then also make sure you have your own checklist of questions that are very specific to your organization, to your business, because even if they're an approved vendor, it may not be the vendor for you. Even if it's a vendor that worked well with someone else, if they don't do the compliance and regulations for the regulatory bodies that you support, are they a good fit for you? So those are the type of questions that I always leave with myself. I call them three magic questions. Like, think about your business because everything is not always a one size fit all. You have to make sure you do your research as well.
Next question. I'm getting ready to start a security consulting company. How do I ensure I'm NIST CSF compliant?
Great question. And first of all, congratulations. Sheila, thank you for bringing up this slide. The three resources that we have here will be a great place to start. There are a lot of things that you'll have to do to one, start your business, also ongoing to keep your business, and then also to make sure that you're compliant, right? And so I would start by doing my research again and making sure that all of the regular, all the regular, all the things that you need to be compliant that you have in place. And just some things will just be certain best practices. Most of the compliance regulation bodies, governing bodies, look at things as do you have a cybersecurity plan? Do you have an incident response plan? Do you have your contracts? Do you have cybersecurity clauses within them? What are this is just a few off the top of my head. What are your SLAs, your service level agreements for any of the third party vendors that you're using? Those are just some best practice that you can use by just putting together your own cybersecurity plan to help you, one, as you're starting your business and incorporating into your business plan, and then also what you'll need to stay compliant as well. But these resources are be some great websites as well. And then when we send out the slides, I'll see if I can find maybe a checklist that I can give you as well that can help you. But congratulations again.
Okay, next question. How can we keep up with the rapid changes in the requirements for
Yeah.
cybersecurity compliance? As a small business with limited time and personnel
Mhm.
resources, sole ownership, LLCs, two-person partnerships. And then the next question was, how may also use AI in cybersecurity compliance practices?
So, one thing I would say that from just my perspective as being a small business owner, and I am in the cyber business, so imagine the rapid changes that are coming our way almost on a daily, monthly basis. And then it also changes depending on what the current administration is doing and what their priorities are. And so, what I can say to you is that depending on the industries and the customers that you support, as something as simple, and this may sound like this can't be that simple, set up just Google searches that will come to you regularly about changes. I get news feeds all the time from everything from HIPAA because I have some medical clients. I get things for for financial institutions because I also do audits for financial institutions, right? So that's the way that I stay abreast of those changes. Coming to webinars like this, getting resources that you can bookmark. These are three great ones. CISA is all about keeping you as a small business owner, as a person. Even they even have things for just regular citizens on how to protect their devices as they're navigating cybersecurity regulations. So that's a great place. NIST is also a great place. FTC is also a great place. That's the best way I can tell you. I know with limited resources, it can be challenging, but again, I always do the risk costs analysis. Do you want prevention or do you want to be reactive? So think about those two as well. How may you use AI in cybersecurity compliance practices? It is a great tool and resource. It can also help you with some of those searches, and it can also give you different links and resources that are very specific to your organization. It can even help you come up with templates that you may want to use for your incident response plan. I know I threw out a couple things: cybersecurity plan, incident response plan, SLAs, contracts, templates. It can help you with that as well. So definitely utilize it. It's there for you as a resource, so that can help you also as you're trying to manage, a limited time and personnel as well. Rely on technology; it's there to serve you. Mhm.
I will add to that, Kiana, the two webinars that you and Lori co-hosted with AI. I don't know if you specifically covered that topic, but there are two webinars on our website, which I dropped the link in the chat for, where you can go look under the cybersecurity and you'll see two related to AI, and we have a whole new, brand new monthly AI workshop. So
Yes.
we're going to start focusing, so that might be one of the focuses. So
Yes, and Lori
just
is
stay
an
tuned.
amazing presenter, and she was a wealth of knowledge, and she will tell you, a lot of things that you can use AI to help you with some of the, even you're talking about having limited resources, you can rely on AI to maybe help with some of the work that you may need to
Hmm.
do as well. So great
Definitely.
resource as well.
Yes.
Mhm.
So we're excited about that new series.
Mhm.
Let's see. Next question. Are there specific areas of my website that need cybersecurity protection?
Yes, your whole website needs cybersecurity protection. So there are things on the market, even if you have like a domain provider, they have a lot of different cybersecurity already built in and some tools. It may cost a couple dollars a month, or even maybe, I know I get SSL certificates, which is another certificate that gives me the S on my website, which says that my site is secure. For me, it's a great another protection layer. When we talked about, think of cybersecurity as like your house, and it's a door and you have all these different locks. So as many security layers that you can have, the better, right? Because it will help with trying to reduce the risk as well. So, do your research as well, but also check back with whoever your domain provider is for your website and see most of the time they have third-party things right there for you to use, pennies on the dollar, which will help with some savings as well.
Great. Next one, is there a list of questions somewhere that will help me determine what type of cybersecurity measures I should implement? Furthermore, I won't be accessing my client's internal systems and they won't access mine, but I want to make sure I'm not missing something.
So yes, so these the three websites that are here definitely have a list of questions that can help you determine like what type of security measures you should implement. But again, some of the things we talked about earlier, think about how you're going to back up your data, how often you're going to patch your devices, employee training. What does that look like? Should it be more role based on the type of employees that you have, right? So sometimes maybe your technology representative will need a different type of training versus someone that's in accounting. Maybe your cybersecurity, so that they call that role-based training. Think about that as well. You already talked about this is already, you got your first cybersecurity policy here. You won't be accessing your clients' internal systems and they won't be accessing yours. So what does that look like? That sounds like you want some controls in place. What are security controls? There are things there to help put almost like a buffer between the technology and the cyber that is used to protect that actual technology. So think about what would I need to make that happen, right? I want to make sure that my clients can access my internal systems and I won't, have access to them. What type of security should I put in place? Do I need to make sure that certain if I have a SharePoint site, should I only make those password protected or only give certain people access to that? Think about all those type of things when you're determining what type of cybersecurity measures you should implement within your organization.
Is there a maximum amount of cybersecurity insurance you should get for your company?
Great question. There's a couple of types of insurance that are on the marketplace. There are some that will secure your business as a whole. If you have like regular business insurance, they may already have some embedded cyber protection for your business. So I would start there first. Contact like your local, whoever you are using for your insurance, contact them. See if there's something that's embedded already and then talk about the type of things that you want to protect because it's going to be different from everyone. So for like myself, because I'm in the cyber business, my devices need to be protected. The work that we do needs to also have a certain level of protection. So the cost that it will be for me will be probably different from someone who doesn't have that line of business. And so talking with your insurance agent, make sure that you have that um, before the meeting. So make sure you have in place, these are the amount of devices I have, these are the amount of employees I have, this is the regulatory bodies that I support, and this is the type of cybersecurity that I need. And see what type of quotes that they give you. Because I'm sure they're going to give you everything from a couple of items to the kitchen sink. So it varies. So make sure you do your research as well. And be prepared prior to going to speak with them because you don't want to get things that you don't need. Because I know with a small business, I'm a small business owner, costs is just as important as, maintaining your customer base, right? Because you want to keep your costs, at a minimum, make sure you're staying on budget. But then you also want to make sure you have a budget to be able to protect those customers and the growth of your business as well.
How should the responsibility for tracking our company's cybersecurity health within the organization be located? Should it be with the CIO, the CEO, the president, the board of directors, etc.?
All of the above. I believe that cybersecurity is everyone's business. Everybody plays a part in the ecosystem, but ultimately, the person that's responsible is the CEO, right? So you think about, you see the major data breaches on the news. Who's the first person that usually comes up? The PR person, and then you get a statement from the CEO, right? Because he or she is ultimately responsible for whatever happened in that incident. And it could have been something as simple as someone leaving their laptop. It could be as simple as someone giving out a password over the phone. They're going to find out what happened, what type of security controls they had in place. I had one customer who had experienced a major outage and breach, and it started from someone just doing a social engineering call. They called in, they were trying to reset a password, and the employee on the other line gave them valuable company information. And so it when they look back and they saw, okay, well, was the person trained? Did they have certain things in place? All of these things go in a part of the investigation as well. And then some of the lessons learned was, okay, we need to make sure this doesn't happen again. The person wasn't being malicious with giving out the information. They thought that they were giving it out to a person that they thought was the right person. So now the training had to shift a little bit. We want you to be trained on what to do on those type of situations, but we also want you to be trained in the event that it could be something that you're not used to, right? So we had to change the training a little bit and shift it, and that came from the CEO. The CEO said, okay, let's revamp our training because this seems more of a training issue than a technology issue, because I could spend tens and thousands of dollars on putting up the latest firewall, multi-factor authentication. But if my employees are giving out information over the phone, that circumvents the whole process, right? So think about all of those in terms. So it's everybody's responsibility.
What question should I ask my laptop provider, in this case Dell, to determine this type of questions? I lease my laptops and they manage the software and the hardware for us.
Yes, I would find out what SLAs, which is a service level agreement that you have because they're your service provider. Find out, what protections do you have as the business owner who's leasing the laptops and they are responsible for managing the software and hardware. So find out where their responsibility starts, where yours starts, and where each ends, because then you have to put together your own agreement, right, for your employees or anyone, your customers to understand, where yours start and where they're in and make sure it's very clear. Because I think that's most of the time the biggest issue is that when there's like no clarity, then no one knows who's responsible in the event that something happens. And then also I would want to know if they are responsible for managing your software and hardware. How often do they do patch management? How do they handle patches when they need to be, deployed to my system? What type of logins do they have as with access to my systems? I know I've called for a service desk and you'll come up on a Dell chat and they're like, I need to get access to your computer. Can you give me access? What type of security controls do you have in place to give them the access? Do you make sure that that account is no longer on the device once they finish their troubleshooting? So all of those things you need to make sure that is clear, you know, as them being your managed service provider. So make sure you have something in place, make sure you reach your SLA, and make sure you're very clear about where their support starts and ends.
And that earlier question you asked, it was answered, so you did cover it. They have one more question. Do
Okay.
you know if state contracts have different cybersecurity requirements?
So yes, they do. Not different not different as in either more rigorous or less, strict. It's just different because of the different compliance for each state, right? So you're going to have like governing bodies, then you have certain things that are like state level. So, like for instance, we used to support a, a, a local contract. Although the requirements were different from our federal partners, they were one and the same, but maybe they handled like password policies. Maybe my federal one wanted me to use a PIV card that had a PIN number. My state contract didn't necessarily have a PIV and a PIN. They had password policy, and their password policy was, 15 characters and all the things that go along with that. So making sure that you're well abreast of each type of customer and what state they're in is also important as well. Making sure you understand the regulatory bodies, both on the federal, state, and local level, because they all may have variations, but more than likely, there are going to be some similarities. Everyone wants you to have a layered approach to cybersecurity, whether there is stringent passwords, multi-factor authentication, doing regular patch management, doing backups, making sure you have some type of cybersecurity plan. So making sure that you are well informed about what those uh, contract obligations or requirements are going to be very key.
Kiana, we don't have any other questions at the moment, so do you have some final words of wisdom?
Yes. So just embrace cybersecurity. It's here. It's definitely here to give your small business, the support it needs in the beginning, all through every stage of your business, and even to help you with growth, making sure that you maintain your customer base, making sure you maintain your customer reputation, right? Think about it. You've been on the other end of the breaches where you've like, wait a minute, this is a big company. Why is every year they're losing my data? Why are they always in the middle of some type of security breach? Think about yourself, put yourself in that mindset when you're developing your contracts, when you're speaking to your vendors, making sure that you're prepared, making sure that you know what you want and what regulatory bodies that you support for your organization are going to be very key to developing those cybersecurity policies and procedures. So here's our contact information. I know I gave a shameless plug in the beginning about Virginia SBDC website. There's a wealth of information there, different webinars, different links. I know we even talked about one webinar with one of our other presenters, Lori, who does the AI. So if you wanted to do a deeper dive, there's support there for you as well.
Kiana, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I want to thank everyone else who joined us today and remind you that you're going to receive an email with a link to both the recording and to the slides. If you would like to sign up for upcoming webinars or access recorded webinars, please visit virginiasbdc.org/training. This webinar and other SBD resources are designed to be used in collaboration with your local SBDC advisors. You can sign up for a free and confidential session by emailing help@virginiasbdc.org or via our website, and we hope to see you all at our next session. Take care,
Thank
everyone.
you guys. Stay cool. Thank you.
Same. Bye.
Bye.